The mountains gave no mercy. They towered like broken teeth against the Afghan sky, jagged and unyielding. In their shadows, 24 Navy SEALs crouched low behind fractured stone, pinned down by the relentless rattle of enemy fire. Muzzle flashes blinked like fireflies across the ridgelines above, each one spitting death into the canyon below. Captain Thomas Reeves pressed his helmet against cold rock, the radio crackling in his ear with devastating words. Negative on air support. Weather too severe. You're on your own until dawn. His weathered face, etched with 56 years of hard living and harder fighting, betrayed nothing to the men who looked to him for leadership. But inside, something sank. Dawn was 7 hours away. The odds were brutal. 200 Taliban fighters held the high ground. His SEAL team was pinned down, ammunition running low. Reeves had survived Desert Storm and a dozen black ops since. But this felt different. The enemy had known exactly where they would be. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a trap. Hold positions, he growled into the comms. Conserve ammo. We dig in until dawn. But his eyes betrayed the truth. There was no holding. Not against RPGs raining down from 4 directions. Not against fighters who had the high ground locked tight. Lieutenant Walker, barely 35, whispered what they all were thinking. This is it, Captain. We're already ghosts. And someone on that ridge was about to remind them all what real blood looked like. The first shot came from nowhere. A single crack echoed across the mountains, so unexpected that for a moment, both SEALs and Taliban fighters paused. Then the heavy machine gun that had pinned down Alpha Team for 20 minutes fell silent. Its operator slumped over, a precision hole through his forehead. What the hell, Reeves muttered, scanning the ridgelines through his night vision. 3 seconds later, another shot split the darkness. An RPG carrier spun backward, his warhead exploding against dirt in a useless fireball. A third shot followed, and the Taliban spotter directing enemy fire dropped instantly. One by one, the positions that had locked down the SEALs began unraveling, as if an unseen hand was erasing threats from the battlefield. The tide wasn't turning. It was being turned deliberately, precisely, by someone they hadn't known was there. The radio crackled to life with a voice Reeves never expected to hear. Sierra Whiskey to Viper Team, move northeast toward the ravine. You'll have cover. The call sign was unfamiliar, but that voice belonged to their communications specialist. The one person who was supposed to be safely back at base camp. Kate Morgan, the same woman he had dismissed as dead weight 6 months earlier. 6 months earlier, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Dam Neck, Virginia. The briefing room fell silent as Colonel James Harrison entered. At 67, he moved with the quiet precision that had made him a legend in special operations. His hair had gone steel gray decades ago, but his eyes remained sharp, constantly assessing. The man had served in every shadow war America had fought since the Cold War began. Panama, Grenada, Desert Storm, Somalia. He'd been one of the architects of modern SEAL operations, though he rarely spoke of it. Harrison wasn't alone. Behind him walked a woman in her late 20s, blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, her posture military perfect. She wore standard-issue BDUs, no insignia beyond the American flag on her shoulder. Gentlemen, Harrison said, his voice carrying the weight of 4 decades of command. This is Kate Morgan, your new communications specialist for Operation Kingfisher. Reeves felt his jaw tighten. He'd been commanding SEAL teams for 15 years, and in all that time, he'd never had a woman assigned to his forward operations unit. Communications specialist or not, this was unprecedented. With all due respect, Colonel, Reeves said, rising slowly from his chair, my team is already fully staffed. We've been training together for 6 months for this deployment. Harrison's eyes hardened. I don't recall asking for your opinion, Captain. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every SEAL participant knew the history between these men, former teammates whose friendship had fractured during Operation Just Cause in Panama, 1989. They'd never spoken publicly about what happened, but the whispers had followed them for decades. Ms. Morgan comes to us with unique qualifications, Harrison continued. Olympic gold medalist in precision shooting, top of her class at Quantico, fluent in Pashto, Dari, and Russian. She'll be an asset. Reeves studied the woman. She stood unflinching under his scrutiny, her pale blue eyes giving away nothing. This is a combat unit, Colonel, Reeves said flatly. Not a social experiment. We operate in the most hostile environments on Earth. I'm well aware of the environments you operate in, Captain. The edge in Harrison's voice could have cut steel. I was commanding SEAL teams while you were still qualifying in buds. Kate Morgan stepped forward. Captain Reeves, she said, her voice calm and measured. I'm not here to disrupt your unit or prove a point. I'm here because I have skills your mission requires. Reeves noted her composure but remained unconvinced. We'll see about that. Training starts at 0500 tomorrow. Don't be late. As the briefing dispersed, Lieutenant Commander Walker, Reeves' second-in-command, muttered under his breath, "Great, they're sending us porcelain on a desert mission." The nickname stuck. By nightfall, the entire unit was calling her porcelain, fragile, decorative, useless in the field. They had no idea what Kate Morgan was made of, but they would learn. Kate Morgan had grown up with the sound of gunfire in her ears. At 10 years old, while other girls collected dolls, she collected spent shell casings. Her father, William Morgan, had been a SEAL sniper with an almost supernatural gift for precision. On weekends, he would take her to private ranges in the Virginia countryside, teaching her the fundamentals of marksmanship with the patience of a born instructor. "Breathing is everything, Katie," he would say, adjusting her stance as she held a modified .22 rifle. "Slow your heart. Feel the space between beats. That's when you squeeze, not pull. Squeeze the trigger." Often James Harrison would join them, her father's mentor and closest friend. Harrison had been there for every milestone in Kate's life. He'd watched her grow from a shy child into a focused young woman with her father's steady hands and analytical mind. The memory that haunted her most came from when she was 13. Her father, preparing for deployment to Somalia, had taken her to the range one last time. "Promise me something, Katie," he'd said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "Whatever happens, never leave your team behind. The mission is important, but the people, they're everything." 2 weeks later, Harrison had appeared at their front door in dress uniform. She'd known what it meant before he spoke a single word. Her father had been killed in Mogadishu during a mission that would later be classified so thoroughly that even his death certificate contained redactions. Harrison had knelt before her, his weathered face lined with grief. "Your father died saving his team," he told her. "He never left anyone behind. And I promise you, Katie, I'll never leave you behind either." She'd grown up in the shadow of that promise. Harrison had remained a constant presence, guiding her education, encouraging her when she showed preternatural talent for marksmanship. When she'd qualified for the Olympic shooting team at 22, he'd been there in the stands, watching with quiet pride as she took gold with a record-breaking score. What the public didn't know, what even Captain Reeves didn't know, was what had come after: the quiet recruitment by the CIA, the specialized training, the classified mission to Moscow where she'd eliminated a high-value target at a distance that had seemed impossible, breaking the unofficial record for the longest confirmed kill by a U.S. operative. All of that was buried under security clearances so high that even most admirals couldn't access them. To the world, to Reeves and his team, she was just an Olympic shooter turned communications specialist. Deadweight, porcelain. And that was exactly how Harrison wanted it. The training field at dawn was shrouded in mist, the obstacle course looming like the skeleton of some prehistoric beast. Kate arrived at 0445, 15 minutes early, to find Captain Reeves already there, performing pull-ups on a metal bar with mechanical precision. He dropped to the ground as she approached, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "Early, I'll give you that much, Morgan." "My father taught me punctuality is the courtesy of kings, Captain." She stood at parade rest, waiting for instructions. "Your father." Reeves wiped sweat from his brow with a towel. "William Morgan, I knew him briefly. Somalia, 93. Something flashed in Kate's eyes. "You were there?" "Different unit, same hellhole." He studied her face, looking for weakness. "He was a good operator. One of the best I've seen behind a rifle." "He was better than good," she said quietly. Reeves nodded once, then turned as the rest of the team arrived. 12 men, the elite of the elite, each one a specialist in dealing death and surviving the unsurvivable. They formed a loose semicircle, eyeing Kate with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "This is Morgan," Reeves announced. "She'll be handling communications for Kingfisher. Today we find out if she can keep up." What followed was brutal by design. The obstacle course had been built to break men who were already among the toughest on Earth. The wall, the pit, the weaver, the rope climb. Each station designed to push human endurance past conventional limits. Kate approached each obstacle methodically, pacing herself. She wasn't as fast as the men, nor as strong, but she moved with economy and precision. The pit, a mud-filled crawl under barbed wire, left her uniform caked and heavy. The 20-foot rope climb burned her palms raw. But she kept going, her face betraying nothing but focus. It was the rifle qualification that changed everything. The course had been set up with human-shaped targets at varying distances, from 100 to 800 yards. Each SEAL would run 400 meters, then drop into firing position and engage the targets in sequence under time pressure. Kate watched as each man completed the course. They were impressive, hitting 80 to 90% of targets with practiced efficiency. When her turn came, she stepped to the line, ignoring the smirks and whispered comments. The whistle blew. She ran, her lungs burning, then dropped into position behind the M4 carbine. Her hands settled into place, muscle memory taking over. She began firing. Perfect shot. Center mass. Another. Another. Her breathing remained controlled, her movements minimal and precise. Each target, regardless of distance, received exactly one bullet, center mass or headshot, depending on the positioning. When she finished, perfect score. Record time. The range fell silent. Reeves frowned, checking her targets through binoculars. "Again," he ordered. She ran the course again. Same result. Perfect score. "I've never seen shooting like that," Lieutenant Commander Walker whispered to Reeves. "Not even from you." Reeves's jaw tightened. She can shoot paper. Field conditions are different. The next test proved his point. They moved to the SEAL team's stress shooting course, a live fire maze filled with smoke, strobe lights, and blaring heavy metal music. Instructors fired blank rounds near the shooter's ears. Targets appeared and disappeared rapidly, some civilian, some hostile. Here, Kate's performance declined. The chaos disrupted her timing, the sensory overload breaking her concentration. She hit only 60% of her targets, the worst score of the day. "That's the difference between the range and reality, Morgan," Reeves said as she finished. "Out there, everything is chaos. Olympic shooting doesn't prepare you for that." Kate nodded once, accepting the criticism. "I'll work on it, Captain." "See that you do." He turned away, then stopped. "Your father never missed, not even under stress." The words cut deeper than he knew. That night, Kate sat alone in her quarters, field stripping an M4A1 sniper rifle. The weapon was standard issue for SEAL snipers, though not part of her official equipment as a communications specialist. Harrison had arranged for her to have one for familiarization purposes. A knock at the door interrupted her concentration. Frank Torres entered without waiting for an answer, closing the door quietly behind him. At 72, Torres was a living legend, one of the original UDT frogmen who had evolved into the earliest SEAL teams. Now officially retired, he served as the training facility's range master, though everyone knew his real value was in the institutional knowledge he carried. "Heard you had an interesting day, Morgan's daughter," he said, using the nickname he'd given her years ago when Harrison first brought her to meet him. "Perfect score on this range, not so perfect under pressure." "How do you always know everything that happens on this base?" Kate asked, continuing to reassemble the rifle. Torres's weathered face cracked into a smile, deepening the lines earned through decades of sun and sea. "I've been watching SEALs train since before your daddy was born. Nothing happens here I don't get wind of." He moved to sit on the room's only chair, his movements still fluid despite his age. "Harrison's got you playing communications specialist," he observed. "Interesting choice for someone with your skill set." Kate looked up sharply. "What do you know about my skill set?" "More than Reeves, less than Harrison." Torres picked up the rifle's bolt carrier, examining it with expert eyes. "But enough to know that putting the best shooter I've seen in 20 years behind a radio instead of a rifle is like using a Ferrari to deliver pizza." He handed the part back to her. "The question is why?" What game is the old Cold Warrior playing now? Kate's hands stilled on the weapon. Cold Warrior? Tora's expression grew serious. That's what we called men like Harrison back in the day. The ones who spent so long fighting the Soviets that they couldn't see the world any other way. For them, the Cold War never really ended, just changed battlefields. He leaned forward. Be careful, Morgan's daughter. Harrison's a good man in his way, but he plays a long game, always has. And sometimes the pieces on his chessboard get sacrificed for the larger strategy. You sound like you don't trust him, Kate said it carefully. Trust? Torres considered the word. I trust him to do what he believes is necessary for national security. Whether that aligns with what's best for the individuals involved, that's a different question. He stood, moving toward the door. Your father was my friend, one of the best men I ever knew. If you're following in his footsteps, you should know what happened to him. Harrison told me. He died saving his team in Somalia. Torres paused, his hand on the doorknob. That's part of the truth, but not all of it. He turned back to her. Your daddy was sent to Somalia on a mission to eliminate a Russian operative, one of the old KGB boys gone freelance, a man named Yuri Volkov. Kate felt her breath catch. This wasn't in any of the files Harrison had shared with her. William had Volkov in his sights, Torres continued. Clean shot, but then he realized Volkov had rigged explosives that would have killed his entire team if he took the shot. So he exposed his position to warn them, saved every last one of them. But it gave Volkov time to spot him and return fire. Torres's eyes held Kate's. Harrison was running the op from a JSOC bunker. He ordered your father to take the shot anyway. Said the target justified the risk. William refused, wouldn't sacrifice his men. By the time it was over, your daddy was dead, and Volkov had disappeared. He opened the door, just something to consider when Harrison gives you an order that doesn't quite add up. After he left, Kate sat motionless, the rifle forgotten in her lap. For years, Harrison had been her mentor, her support, almost a second father. Now Torres was suggesting there might be other motives behind his interest in her. She moved to her small desk and powered up her secure laptop. Time to do some digging on Operation Kingfisher and to find out what she could about a man named Yuri Volkov. The next 3 months followed a punishing rhythm. Days spent training with Reeves' increasingly demanding scenarios. Nights spent alone on the stress course, working to overcome her weaknesses. Kate's body grew leaner, harder, her reactions quicker. The gap between her performance and the other team members narrowed, though never completely closed. She remained an outsider. The nickname Porcelain followed her everywhere, whispered behind her back or sometimes said directly to her face. Most of the team had accepted her presence but not her value. She was tolerated, not trusted. Reeves watched her progress with grudging acknowledgement but maintained his distance. The hostility had faded into something closer to professional skepticism until the night everything changed. It was after midnight when Kate spotted him at the far end of the compound. Reeves alone, standing at the memorial wall where the names of fallen SEALs were inscribed on simple metal plates. She would have turned away, respecting his privacy, but something in his posture, a vulnerability she'd never witnessed, made her approach. He sensed her before she spoke, military instincts never truly dormant. Morgan, it's late. Yes, sir, I was heading back from the range. Reeves nodded, his eyes still on the wall. His finger rested on a name, Michael Harrison. The colonel's son, Kate said quietly. You know about him? James, Colonel Harrison, mentioned him once. Said he died in Panama. Reeves's laugh was hollow, empty of humor. That's one way to put it. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of waves breaking against the Virginia shoreline. Finally, Reeves spoke again, his voice lower, rough with memory. We were a 5-man team. Harrison was in command. His son Michael was our point man. I was second. 2 others, Davis and Ramirez, rounded us out. Panama City, 1989. Operation Just Cause. We were tasked with extracting a high-value intelligence asset from a Noriega compound. He paused, his breathing measured. The intel was bad. We walked into an ambush. Michael took the first hit, critical but survivable with immediate evac. The asset was pinned down with him. Davis and Ramirez moved to provide covering fire while I got to Michael. Kate remained still. sensing she was hearing something few ever had. Harrison made the call, ordered us to abandon Michael and the asset, prioritize the intelligence documents in the compound, said the mission parameters had changed. His hand curled into a fist against the wall. I refused, told him I wasn't leaving his son to die. He pulled rank, threatened court-martial. While we argued, the enemy repositioned. Davis and Ramirez were killed trying to reach Michael's position. And Michael, Kate asked softly, bled out before we could reach him. Reeves finally turned to face her. Harrison got his precious intelligence, earned a commendation for it. 3 men died, including his own son, but the mission was a success. The bitterness in his voice was palpable. That's who you're following, Morgan. A man who will sacrifice anyone, even his own blood, for mission parameters. Kate absorbed this, her mind racing. It didn't match the James Harrison she knew, the man who had been like a second father to her. But she could see the truth in Reeves' eyes, feel it in the rawness of his voice. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand who you're dealing with. Harrison didn't put you on this team for your communication skills. He wants something, and he's using you to get it. Reeves stepped closer, his voice dropping. Whatever game he's playing, be careful. When the moment comes, and it will, he'll sacrifice you just as quickly as he did his own son. He walked away then, leaving Kate alone with the wall of the dead and questions she couldn't begin to answer. The next morning, Harrison found her at the rifle range practicing before dawn. He watched silently as she fired a perfect grouping at 600 yards, the bullets hitting so close together they formed a single ragged hole. Your father would be proud, he said as she lowered the weapon. Kate didn't turn around. Would he? Or would he have left me behind too? Harrison's silence told her everything. He moved to stand beside her, his face impassive in the dim light. Reeves talked to you about Panama, about Michael. Harrison nodded once. I wondered when he would. Is it true? Did you leave your own son to die for the mission? The old colonel's eyes remained fixed downrange. The truth is rarely simple in our line of work, Kate. Yes, I made the call to continue the mission, despite Michael being hit. The intelligence we were after was time-sensitive. Locations of Noriega's weapon caches, details about Soviet advisors operating in Panama, information that saved hundreds of American lives at the cost of 3. Yes, he continued, no hesitation, no defensiveness, just acknowledgement. Including my son, the hardest decision I've ever made. The weight of it never leaves. Kate studied him, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. She found only the same steadiness she'd always known in him. Why are you telling me this now? Because Reeves is right about one thing. I didn't put you on this team just for your communication skills. Operation Kingfisher is more complex than the briefing suggests. There are elements that have been compartmentalized, known only to me and certain intelligence agencies. What elements? Harrison finally turned to face her. The target we're extracting from Afghanistan isn't just a nuclear scientist. He's a former Soviet weapons designer who defected with information about a portable nuclear device, a suitcase nuke that went missing after the USSR collapsed. We have intelligence suggesting it's now in Taliban hands, possibly being prepared for transport to America. Kate felt her breath catch. In the communications specialist role, a cover. Your real purpose will depend on how the operation develops. He placed a hand on her shoulder. I need someone I can trust. Absolutely. Someone with your particular skills. Someone who understands that sometimes hard choices must be made for the greater good. Like sacrificing 3 men in Panama. If necessary, yes. His grip tightened slightly. This is bigger than any of us, Kate. Millions of lives could depend on the success of this mission. She stepped back, breaking his hold. Does Reeves know any of this? No, and he can't. His history with me would compromise his judgment. So you're using me to manipulate him, to make sure he follows the real mission parameters when the time comes. Harrison didn't deny it. I'm trusting you to help me save American lives, just as your father would have done. The mention of her father felt like a calculated blow. Don't use him to manipulate me, James. I'm not manipulating you, Kate. I'm preparing you. When the moment comes in Afghanistan, you'll need to make choices. Difficult ones. I need to know you are capable of that. Kate turned back to her rifle, checking the scope adjustments with meticulous care. I'll complete the mission, Colonel, whatever it takes. I know you will. He started to walk away, then paused. One more thing. The eastern ridge above the target compound. It's not in any of the briefing materials, but it provides a clear line of sight to the entire valley. Why tell me this if I'm just a communications specialist? Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Information is ammunition, Kate. Load your weapon accordingly. That night, Kate swept away from the barracks and made her way to the facility's secure records room. Her CIA credentials, unknown to Reeves or anyone else on the SEAL team, gave her access that few others on the base possessed. She spent hours poring over classified documents related to Operation Kingfisher, looking for inconsistencies, hidden agendas. What she found disturbed her deeply. The extraction target, Dr. Alexander Volkov, appeared in all the official briefings, but she could find no record of him in any intelligence database. It was as if the man had been created from thin air. What she did find, buried in old Cold War files, was mention of a Yuri Volkov, former KGB officer specializing in nuclear arms procurement. The same man Torres had said her father was sent to eliminate in Somalia. The same man who had killed William Morgan. Kate's research was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. She quickly closed the files as Frank Torres entered, his eyes taking in the situation at a glance. Burning the midnight oil, Morgan's daughter? Just getting familiar with the mission parameters. Torres nodded, unconvinced. And finding things that don't quite add up, I'd wager. Kate hesitated, then decided to trust her instincts. The extraction target doesn't exist. At least, not the one in the briefing. Not surprising. Torres moved to sit across from her. Harrison has run these kinds of operations before, what he calls sacrifice plays. Looks like one mission on paper. Turns out to be something else entirely once boots hit the ground. But why lie to his own team? Because most men won't willingly walk into a trap, but that's exactly what Harrison needs sometimes. Bait to draw out a bigger target. Kate felt cold at the implication. You think Kingfisher is a setup? That the team is meant to be bait? Torres' weathered face was grim. I think Harrison is playing a game that started during the Cold War. A game where pieces get sacrificed to take more valuable pieces off the board. He leaned forward. Listen to me carefully. There are rumors, things I've heard from old contacts still in the game. Whispers about a loose nuke. One of the old Soviet suitcase devices. The RA-115, we called it. 15 kilotons. Portable enough for one man to carry, devastating enough to flatten Manhattan. Harrison mentioned something like that, Kate acknowledged. Then you know what's really at stake. The question is, what's Harrison not telling you? And why put a sniper of your caliber in a communications role unless he expects you to end up behind a rifle at some point? Kate considered this. He mentioned an eastern ridge, said it overlooked the entire target area but wasn't in any of the briefing materials. Torres nodded slowly. Now we're getting somewhere. He's giving you an out, a position away from whatever trap he's setting for the team. He stood, moving toward the door. Be ready, Morgan's daughter. When the moment comes, you'll have to choose where your loyalty lies, with Harrison's mission or with the men on the ground. What would you do, Torres? Kate asked, needing guidance from someone who understood the stakes. The old frogman paused, considering. Your father chose his men over the mission. Harrison chose the mission over his own son. Both believed they were right. His eyes, faded but still sharp, met hers. The difference is your father could still look himself in the mirror afterward. After he left, Kate returned to the files with renewed purpose. If Operation Kingfisher was a trap, she needed to understand exactly what kind and who it was meant to catch. The final briefing for Operation Kingfisher came 3 months later. The team had gelled into a formidable unit despite the lingering tension between Reeves and Harrison. Kate had earned a measure of respect from most of the men, though the nickname Porcelain persisted. The briefing room walls were covered with satellite imagery of a compound nestled in the mountains along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Harrison stood at the front, pointer in hand, his face grave. Gentlemen and Ms. Morgan, this is your target, a remote compound controlled by Taliban forces currently holding Dr. Alexander Volkov, a nuclear physicist with critical intelligence about Pakistani weapons development. Our mission is simple. Extract Dr. Volkov alive and return him to U.S. custody. Lieutenant Commander Walker raised a hand. Intel on opposing forces? Approximately 30 to 40 fighters, standard Taliban armament, RPGs, AKs, possibly a few heavy machine guns. Harrison circled several positions on the map. Guard posts here, here, and here. Main force concentrated in these buildings. Kate studied the topography, her eyes drawn to the eastern ridge Harrison had mentioned. It dominated the valley, providing perfect oversight of the entire compound. Yet it wasn't marked as a tactical position in the briefing materials. "Sir," she said, breaking protocol by speaking without being called on. "What about the eastern ridge? It appears to provide an advantageous observation point." Harrison's face revealed nothing. "The eastern ridge is too steep, too exposed for practical use. Our insertion point will be here to the west, with a secondary team providing the cover from the northern approach." Reeves frowned, examining the ridge Kate had indicated. "Morgan's right. That ridge would give us complete valley coverage. Why not position a spotter there?" "Because no one could reach it in time without being detected," Harrison replied smoothly. "The climb would take hours, and satellite imagery shows no cover on the approach. It's a death trap." "With respect, Colonel," Kate persisted, "I believe it could be scaled during night hours. The rock face appears to have sufficient handholds, and cloud cover is predicted for the insertion window." The room fell silent. Kate had effectively challenged the mission commander's assessment, a bold move for anyone, let alone the team's junior member. Harrison's eyes narrowed fractionally. "An interesting theory, Morgan, but unnecessary. The plan, as outlined, provides sufficient coverage without exposing any team member to such risk." "And if things go sideways?" Reeves asked, his tactical mind clearly considering the possibility. "Having eyes on that ridge could be the difference between success and failure." "The plan is sound, Captain," Harrison said with finality. "We insert at 0200 local time. 2 teams, Alpha Team secures the perimeter. Bravo extracts the asset. Communications will be maintained through the forward base station, which Morgan will operate." And there it was. Kate would be kept safely away from the action, manning the radios from a distance, exactly as expected, exactly as she'd been trained for officially. The rest of the briefing covered extraction protocols, code words, and contingency plans. Throughout it all, Kate felt Reeves watching her, his expression thoughtful. After they were dismissed, he caught up to her in the corridor. "That ridge bothers you?" he said without preamble. "It should bother you too, Captain. It's the perfect overwatch position, and we're ignoring it." Reeves nodded slowly. "Harrison's hiding something. This mission, it doesn't add up. A Pakistani nuclear scientist wouldn't be held in a remote Taliban compound. He'd be in a government facility in Islamabad or Karachi. Maybe he defected. Maybe he has information both sides want. Maybe." Reeves wasn't convincing. "Whatever the truth is, we're not getting it, which means we need to be prepared for anything." He lowered his voice. "When we deploy, stick to protocol, but keep your eyes open. If things go south, I need to know I can count on you." Kate met his gaze steadily. "You can, Captain. Whatever happens." For the first time since she joined the team, Reeves looked at her without skepticism or judgment, just professional assessment. "I believe you, Morgan. Let's hope we don't have to test it." The C-17 transport plane's engines droned as it crossed the Atlantic. Inside, the SEAL team ran through final equipment checks, each man focused on his own preparations. Kate sat apart, ostensibly reviewing communications protocols, but actually contemplating the conflicting agendas at play. Harrison believed the mission involved a suitcase nuclear device. Reeves suspected they weren't getting the full story, and Kate was caught between them, carrying secrets from both sides. Harrison approached, taking the seat beside her. "All set with the communications gear?" "Yes, sir. Primary and backup systems checked and operational." He nodded, then said quietly, "Remember our discussion about hard choices, Kate. Things may not go according to the briefing. If that happens, I'm counting on you to make the right call." "And what call is that exactly?" Harrison's voice dropped further. "The Eastern Ridge. If the opportunity presents itself, take it, but only if absolutely necessary." Before she could question him further, he rose and moved away, leaving her with cryptic instructions and a growing sense of unease. Hours later, Reeves found a moment to speak with her privately. "Morgan, a word." They moved to the rear of the aircraft, away from the others. Reeves handed her a small package. Specialized communications equipment. Secure frequency. Encrypted. If standard comms fail, use this direct line to me. Bypasses the chain of command. Kate stared at the device. Sir, this isn't standard protocol. Neither is whatever game Harrison is playing. His eyes were hard. I've been in this business too long not to recognize when intelligence is being manipulated. If things go sideways out there, I need a direct line to every asset, including you. You think the colonel is setting us up? I think he's pursuing an agenda that may not prioritize team survival. Reeves checked to ensure they weren't being observed. Panama taught me a lesson I never forgot. Always have a backup plan when working with James Harrison. Kate slipped the device into her gear. Understood, Captain. The aircraft began its descent into Bagram Air Base. As the team prepared for landing, Kate caught a final glimpse of Harrison watching her from across the plane, his expression unreadable. Whatever Operation Kingfisher truly was, she was now caught between two strong-willed commanders with decades of mistrust between them. And somewhere in the mountains ahead, whatever secret they were really hunting waited to be uncovered. The wheels touched down on Afghan soil. The mission clock had started. Forward Operating Base Chapman huddled against the Afghan mountains like a fortress from another age. Here, at the edge of American influence, the rules of engagement grew murky, and operations often existed in the shadowy realm between official and deniable. Kate set up the communications station in a hardened bunker, establishing links with satellite networks and tactical frequencies. The SEAL team would deploy in 6 hours, using the cover of darkness to approach the target compound. Her official role would keep her here, safely behind concrete walls. But Harrison's words echoed in her mind. The Eastern Ridge. If the opportunity presents itself, take it. As she worked, she became aware of a presence behind her. Reeves, watching her methodically check each system. Your father was thorough too, he said. Never saw a man so meticulous with pre-mission checks. Kate continued working. You mentioned you knew him in Somalia. Adjacent. Different teams, same AO. I saw him the night before his last mission. He was checking his rifle just like you checked those comms. Same expression, same hands. She paused, turning to face him. Why are you telling me this now? Reeves leaned against the doorframe, his face shadowed. Because I've been unfair to you, Morgan. I let old grudges color my judgment. You've earned your place on this team, whatever Harrison's real agenda might be. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. His voice hardened. Something's wrong with this operation. The intelligence, the timing, the target, none of it fits standard protocol. And now we've received updated intel that there may be significantly more hostiles than initially reported. How many more? Intercepts suggest possibly over 100 fighters converging on the compound in the next 24 hours. Kate felt her blood chill. Have you told Colonel Harrison? I have. He insists we proceed as planned, says the window of opportunity is closing. Reeves stepped closer. I've requested postponement until we can get air support guaranteed. He refused. What are you going to do? Follow orders, for now. His eyes met hers, searching. But I need to know where you stand, Morgan. If things go bad out there, if we have to make hard choices, who are you with? The question hung between them, laden with history she'd had no part in, but now found herself entangled with. Kate thought of her father, of Harrison's mentorship, of Reeves's warnings. I'm with the team, Captain, she said finally. Whatever happens, I won't leave anyone behind. Something in Reeves's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Your father said those exact words to me once, in Somalia. He straightened, military bearing returning. Get some rest before deployment. You'll need it. After he left, Kate sat motionless at her station, weighing her options. The Eastern Ridge loomed in her mind like a prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. Harrison wanted her there, had been preparing her for it all along. But why? What did he expect to happen that required her specific skills in that specific location? Her hand brushed against the Barrett M82A1 sniper rifle that had mysteriously appeared among her gear during transport. Another of Harrison's manipulations, a weapon she had no official reason to carry as a communications specialist, yet one she'd trained with extensively. The pieces began falling into place. Harrison expected the mission to fail. expected the team to be overwhelmed by superior numbers. And he wanted her in position to, what? Ensure the primary objective when everything went to hell? Kate checked her watch. 4 hours until deployment. Time enough to make preparations of her own. She gathered specialized gear, climbing equipment, extended ammunition, night vision, survival essentials. Everything she would need for a solo mission to the Eastern Ridge. If Harrison wanted her there, she would go. But on her terms, not his. As the sun set over the Afghan mountains, Kate Morgan prepared for war. Not the war they had briefed, but the one she now understood was coming. A war where she would be the unknown variable, the hidden guardian watching over men who didn't know they needed protection. Her father's voice seemed to whisper in her ear, "Never leave your team behind." She wouldn't, whatever it took. The night air bit with mountain chill as the SEAL team prepared for deployment. 24 men checking weapons, adjusting equipment, each focused on the dangerous hours ahead. Kate maintained her position at the communication station, ostensibly preparing for her role in supporting the mission from base. Colonel Harrison entered the bunker, his face grim in the blue light of the tactical displays. "Final communications check, Morgan. Everything operational?" "Yes, sir. All systems green. I have clear channels to both Alpha and Bravo teams." Harrison nodded, then lowered his voice. "The situation has evolved. Latest intelligence suggests the target may be moved within the next 12 hours, and enemy forces are larger than initially reported." "Captain Reeves mentioned that, sir." "Did he?" Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. "Did he also mention his request to abort the mission, his lack of confidence in the plan?" "He expressed concerns about the intelligence, sir." Harrison's expression hardened. "Reeves is a good tactical commander, but he doesn't see the bigger picture. What we're pursuing is worth the risk. A suitcase nuclear device potentially in transit to American soil as we speak." Harrison checked his watch. "The teams deploy in 30 minutes. Once they're gone, I'll be coordinating with Langley from the command center." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember what we discussed about the Eastern Ridge?" "Sir, with all due respect, that ridge would take hours to reach. By the time I got there, the operation would be well underway." "Perhaps," his eyes held hers, "but if things go wrong, having someone in that position could make all the difference." After Harrison left, Kate completed her final preparations. Beneath her standard communications gear, she wore a tactical harness designed for mountain operations. The Barrett rifle was disassembled and hidden in a specialized pack. Everything ready for the contingency only she and Harrison seemed to expect. The SEAL team departed at 0100 hours, 2 helicopters lifting into the darkness. Kate maintained communications protocol, tracking their progress through the mountainous terrain. From her station, she could hear the terse exchanges between team members, the professional shorthand of men preparing for combat. At 1:30, when the command center's attention was focused on the approaching insertion, Kate slipped away from her station. The communications system would continue to function automatically for basic traffic, enough to maintain the illusion of her presence for some time. She moved through the shadows of the base, avoiding patrols, using the skills Harrison himself had helped her develop. The eastern perimeter had a blind spot where the floodlights didn't quite overlap. She slipped through it like a ghost, disappearing into the Afghan night. The eastern ridge loomed before her, a wall of stone knives against the star-filled sky. Kate began climbing, her hands finding purchase on cold rock, muscles straining against gravity. Each meter gained was a battle against nature itself. As she climbed, she monitored the operation through her secured earpiece. The SEAL team had reached the insertion point. Alpha team was establishing a perimeter. Bravo was advancing toward the compound. Then came the words that confirmed her worst fears. Contact. Heavy contact. Multiple hostiles, far more than intel suggested. The sound of gunfire carried across the mountains, both through her earpiece and faintly on the night air. The mission was going wrong, exactly as Harrison had predicted. Kate doubled her efforts, scaling the treacherous ridge with desperate determination. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "Never leave your team behind." Below her, in the shadowed valley, 24 American operators were walking into what increasingly sounded like a massacre. And she was their only unknown asset, the guardian no one knew was coming. The ridge seemed to stretch endlessly upward, each handhold of victory, each slip a near disaster. But Kate Morgan kept climbing, driven by a promise made long ago, and the knowledge that without her, those men might never see dawn. The mountain gave no mercy. Kate's muscles screamed as she scaled the eastern ridge, each handhold a victory against gravity and time. Sweat froze against her skin, despite the exertion, the Afghan night bitter with mountain chill. Below, gunfire erupted in staccato bursts, muzzle flashes painting the valley in brief, violent illumination. Through her earpiece, chaos unfolded. Heavy fire from the North Ridge. We've got at least 50, no, more, fighters converging. Alpha team pinned down, cannot advance to objective. RPG, get down. Then Reeves's voice steady amid the storm. Fall back to position Bravo. Defensive formation. Conserve ammunition. Kate climbed faster, fingers bleeding as they clawed against stone. The ridge had been dismissed as unscalable for good reason, its face nearly vertical in sections, exposed to winds that threatened to tear her from her precarious position. Yet she advanced, driven by something deeper than training. Below her, men she'd grown to respect were dying, caught in a trap that had been waiting all along. Harrison, she whispered through gritted teeth, what game are you playing? The communications gear in her ear crackled with another transmission, this one on the secure channel Reeves had given her. Morgan? His voice was tight, controlled despite the circumstances. Comms base reports you are not at your station. Where are you, Pamo? She hesitated, then tapped her response. En route to alternate position, Eastern Ridge. Silence stretched for several seconds, broken only by distant gunfire. Understood, Reeves finally replied. We're in a bad situation here. Intel was completely wrong. Facing approximately 200 hostiles, well-equipped. They were waiting for us. Status of the team? 3 wounded, none critical yet. We've pulled back to defensive positions, but we're surrounded. No extraction possible until daylight at earliest. Kate pulled herself onto a narrow ledge, gasping for breath. And the target, Dr. Volkov? Negative contact. Building was empty when we breached. This whole thing feels like a setup, Reeves finished for her. Affirmative. Harrison has gone silent since the ambush began. Command says he's in conference with higher-ups. Of course he was. Whatever Harrison's true objective, the unfolding disaster was likely part of his calculation. Kate had seen enough of his strategic mind to know he always played several moves ahead. She reached a relatively stable outcropping and took a moment to assemble her rifle. The Barrett M82A1 came together in her hands with practiced precision. Through the advanced scope, the valley below transformed from chaotic shadows to a detailed battlefield. She could see the SEAL positions, the enemy fighters moving like ghosts between stone structures. The flash of weapons. I have Overwatch, she reported to Reeves. Eastern Ridge secured. His reply carried the first hint of hope since the mission began. Can you provide support? Kate settled into position, controlling her breathing as her father had taught her. Affirmative, standby. Through her scope, she identified the most immediate threat, a heavy machine gun position hammering Alpha Team's location. The gunner was well protected behind sandbags, visible only when he shifted position to adjust his fire. Kate calculated distance, 876 meters. Wind speed approximately 12 knots from the northwest. Temperature near freezing. Elevation difference, 340 meters. Her mind processed the variables automatically, making adjustments to her scope and position. She exhaled slowly, finger curling around the trigger. The Barrett roared, its massive recoil absorbed by her braced position. Through the scope, she watched the heavy gunner slump forward, a precision shot through his exposed shoulder area. The machine gun fell silent. Target down, she reported calmly. Below, she could almost feel the SEAL team's confusion. Where had that shot come from? Who was providing Overwatch that hadn't been part of the mission plan? Morgan? Reeves's voice held disbelief. That was you? Affirmative. I count approximately 35 hostiles visible from my position. Multiple heavy weapons emplacements. They have the compound surrounded in a standard ambush formation. A pause, then. I thought you were communications support. Kate almost smiled despite the circumstances. I am. I also happen to be a very good shot. Halfway across the world, in a secure room beneath Langley, Virginia, Colonel James Harrison stood before a wall of screens displaying real-time satellite imagery of the unfolding disaster in Afghanistan. Beside him, CIA Deputy Director Warren Clark watched with cold detachment. "Your men are surrounded, Colonel," Clark observed. "Extraction appears unlikely before morning, if at all." Harrison's face remained impassive. "They're SEALs. They'll hold." "And the primary objective?" "Proceeding exactly as planned." Clark's eyebrows lifted. 200 Taliban fighters weren't part of the plan. "No," Harrison conceded, "but they're a useful complication. The heavier the resistance, the more believable the scenario." "And Morgan, will she make it to position?" Harrison checked a separate display showing a small blinking dot, Kate's tracking device, now positioned exactly where he'd intended all along. "She's already there." "Remarkable." Clark studied the tactical display with newfound interest. "You were right about her capabilities. Let's hope you're right about her resolve when the moment comes." Harrison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "She won't fail. For all our sakes, she better not." Clark gestured to another screen showing a digital countdown. "The extraction team is already inbound. 12 hours until they reach the rendezvous point. If Volkov doesn't make the exchange, this entire operation collapses, and with it, our only chance to recover that missing nuclear device." "Volkov will be there," Harrison said with certainty, "as soon as he realizes Kate is in position." "And your SEAL team? What about them?" Harrison turned away from the screens, his weathered face betraying nothing. "They'll serve their purpose." Kate worked methodically, each shot creating space for the surrounded SEALs to maneuver. From her elevated position, she could see what they couldn't: the shifting patterns of the enemy, their reinforcement routes, their command structure. "Reeves, you have 3 fighters approaching from your 6, using the dry creek bed as cover." "Copy that." A brief burst of gunfire. "Targets down. Morgan, you're giving us a fighting chance here." Kate shifted positions, scanning for priority threats. Through her scope, she caught a glimpse of movement in a building that she'd previously marked as clear. A man emerged briefly, tall, European features, civilian clothes. He appeared to be speaking urgently into a satellite phone. "Possible HVT spotted," she reported. "Building 3, eastern side. Caucasian male, mid-50s, gray hair. Doesn't match target description." Reeves's response was immediate. "That's not Volkov. Volkov is in his 30s, dark hair." Kate felt her suspicions crystallize into certainty. "Our intel was wrong or deliberately falsified. Focus on keeping us alive, Morgan. We'll sort out the intelligence failure later, if we survive this." She continued working, eliminating threat after threat with mechanical precision. Each shot meant one less fighter targeting the SEAL team. Each kill bought them precious seconds of survival. 2 hours into her overwatch, Kate spotted a new threat. Through her thermal scope, she detected a figure moving with practiced stealth along the ridge opposite her position. The way he moved, the specialized rifle he carried, the methodical scanning pattern. This was no ordinary Taliban fighter. This was a trained counter-sniper. Kate shifted position immediately, using the techniques her father had taught her. Never fire twice from the same location. Use available terrain for concealment. Minimize silhouette against the horizon. She watched as the enemy sniper established his position, his scope methodically sweeping the eastern ridge where she was located. He was good, disciplined, patient, searching for the telltale signs of a hidden shooter. Kate remained perfectly still, controlling even her breathing to prevent visible vapor in the frigid mountain air. The duel had begun, a silent, deadly game of hunter and hunted. The first to spot the other would likely prevail. Minutes stretched into an eternity as neither moved. Kate studied her opponent through her scope, noting details. His equipment was Russian-made but not standard issue, the specialized modifications of a professional. His technique was textbook Spetsnaz, the Russian special force known for their exceptional snipers. What was a Russian-trained sniper doing with Taliban fighters? A transmission from Reeves interrupted her concentration. "Morgan, we're running low on ammunition. Situation deteriorating. Do you have eyes on any escape route?" "Negative," she replied softly. "They have all obvious routes covered." "Stand by." The counter-sniper shifted slightly, his scope reflecting moonlight for a fraction of a second. A rookie mistake no true professional would make. Unless Kate realized the truth an instant too late. It was a deliberate ploy, a calculated risk to draw her attention while a second sniper moved into position. She caught the movement in her peripheral vision, another figure already aiming directly at her position. She rolled sideways as a bullet struck exactly where her head had been moments before, sending stone fragments flying. In one fluid motion, she brought her rifle around, located the second shooter, and fired. Through her scope, she saw the man's body jerk backward, the shot finding its mark despite her hasty aim. But the motion had exposed her position to the first sniper. Another shot cracked past her, close enough that she felt the displacement of air against her cheek. Kate scrambled behind an outcropping, heart hammering against her ribs. The game had changed. The enemy now knew exactly where she was, and she'd lost the advantage of stealth. "Taking fire," she reported tersely. "Enemy sniper team on the western ridge." "Can you maintain position?" Reeves asked. "Affirmative, but I'm compromised. We'll need to relocate." Kate studied the terrain, plotting her next move. The ridge offered limited options. Moving meant exposure. Staying meant eventually being flanked. She needed to eliminate the remaining sniper before he could coordinate with ground forces to target her position. She reached into her pack, extracting a small mirror and a flexible rod. With practiced movements, she extended the rod and attached the mirror, creating a primitive periscope. Cautiously, she raised it above her cover, angling to see the western ridge without exposing herself. The enemy sniper had shifted position, but a small dust cloud betrayed his new location. Kate analyzed the situation, calculating bullet drop, wind variables, and the compensation needed for her awkward firing position. One shot, one chance. She took 3 measured breaths, visualizing the sequence of movements required. Then she pivoted from cover, rifle already aligned with her pre-calculated aim point. The Barrett's report echoed across the valley as she fired and immediately ducked back behind the stone outcropping. Through her earpiece came the confirmation from Reeves. "Direct hit. Target down." Kate allowed herself one brief moment of relief before returning to the mission. Resuming Overwatch. "Be advised, the presence of specialized snipers suggests this isn't a standard Taliban force." "No," Reeves replied grimly. "These guys have advanced tactics, modern weapons, and they knew exactly where we'd be." "Someone sold us out, Morgan." The implication hung unspoken between them. Harrison had orchestrated this, but to what end? Kate scanned the compound again, focusing on the building where she'd spotted the Caucasian man. He appeared briefly at a window, speaking into what appeared to be a satellite radio. Something about his bearing, his confident movements amid the chaos, suggested authority. She adjusted her scope, zooming in on his features. Middle-aged, hard-faced, with the cold eyes of a predator. Something about him struck her as familiar, though she was certain they'd never met. The man turned slightly, his profile catching the moonlight, and sudden recognition hit her like a physical blow. "Reeves," she said, her voice tight. "I have visual confirmation on Yuri Volkov." "Who the hell is Yuri Volkov?" "Our target is Alexander Volkov." Yuri Volkov, former KGB officer specializing in nuclear intelligence during the Soviet era. He went off the grid then after the USSR collapsed. "How do you know this?" Kate hesitated. "Harrison's files. I saw his picture during mission prep." Another lie. She knew Volkov from her classified CIA training, from the dossiers of high-value Russian intelligence assets still operating in the field. His presence here confirmed her worst suspicions. This was never about extracting a defecting scientist. It was about something far more dangerous. "What's a former KGB officer doing with Taliban fighters?" Reeves asked. "I don't know," Kate replied, though she was beginning to piece it together. "But I bet it connects to the real reason we're here." As if to punctuate her statement, an explosion rocked the valley below. One of the SEAL positions had taken a direct RPG hit. Man down, Walker's hit bad." Kate watched in horror as the team's second-in-command was dragged to cover, his body limp. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. "Morgan," Reeves's voice had taken on a new urgency. "If you have any bright ideas, now would be the time." She studied the battlefield, calculating options. "I count 5 RPG teams targeting your positions. If I can eliminate them, you might have a window to reposition to the northeastern ravine. It's not currently covered by their heavy weapons." "Do it." Kate shifted her attention to the RPG teams, prioritizing the most immediate threats. Her fingers squeezed the trigger rhythmically. 5 shots, 5 targets down in less than 20 seconds. Move now, she instructed. Northeastern ravine. I'll cover your withdrawal. The SEALs executed the maneuver with professional precision despite their casualties. Kate provided covering fire, eliminating any fighter who attempted to pursue. Within minutes, the team had established a more defensible position in the rocky ravine. Better position secured, Reeves confirmed. 3 wounded, 1 critical. Walker might not make it without immediate evac. Kate felt the weight of their situation bearing down on her. 24 men had walked into this trap. How many would walk out? Reeves, she said after a moment's consideration, I think I know what's really happening here. I'm listening. The mission parameters, the false intel, Harrison's insistence on proceeding despite the risks, it all points to one conclusion. This isn't an extraction. It's a distraction. Distraction from what? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. Kate focused her scope on Volkov's building again. I'm going to track Volkov. He's the key to whatever's really happening here. Negative, Morgan. Your overwatch is keeping us alive. I can do both, trust me. She continued to provide cover for the SEAL team while monitoring Volkov's movements. The former KGB officer appeared to be preparing for departure, gathering equipment and conferring with lieutenants. 3 hours after establishing her position, Kate observed Volkov leaving the compound with a small security detail. They moved not toward the SEAL positions, but away from the battle entirely, heading deeper into the mountains through a narrow pass. Volkov is on the move, she reported. Small group heading east through the mountain pass. They're carrying something, a reinforced case, approximately 1 meter long. Reeves's voice was grim. A nuclear device would fit in a case that size. My thoughts exactly. Kate made her decision. I'm going to follow them. Morgan, that's not the mission. It never was, she replied. The real mission is whatever Volkov is carrying away from this battlefield while 200 fighters keep you occupied. A long pause followed. Finally, Reeves spoke. Go, but maintain contact. And Kate, be careful. This whole operation stinks of a sacrifice play. I know. She secured her rifle and began moving along the ridge, maintaining visual contact with Volkov's group. Harrison's specialty, sacrifice plays. In Panama, it had been his own son. In Somalia, her father. And now, an entire SEAL team. Not if she could help it. In the CIA Operations Center, alarms suddenly blared. Harrison looked up sharply as a technician announced, Sir, Morgan's tracker has gone offline. What? Harrison moved to the monitor. The blinking dot representing Kate had vanished completely. Signal terminated approximately 30 seconds ago, the technician confirmed. Last known position was moving east from the overwatch position. Clark's expression darkened. She disabled her tracker. Why would she do that unless... He turned to Harrison. She knows, doesn't she? Somehow she figured it out. Harrison's face remained impassive, but his mind raced through calculations. She's smart. Too smart, perhaps. This jeopardizes everything, Clark said. If she interferes with the exchange, she won't. Harrison's voice was certain. Kate Morgan is her father's daughter. She'll do what's necessary when she understands the stakes. And if she doesn't? Harrison didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice had dropped to a near whisper. Then may God help us all, because no one else can. Kate moved with predatory silence along the ridgeline, tracking Volkov's team as they navigated the treacherous mountain pass. She had disabled her tracking device, suspecting Harrison was monitoring her movements. Whatever game he was playing, she would no longer be an unwitting piece on his board. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten, false dawn painting the mountains in ghostly gray. Kate estimated she had perhaps an hour before full light exposed her position completely. She needed to close the distance, understand what Volkov was carrying, and determine the true nature of the operation. Her earpiece crackled with Reeves's voice. Morgan, situation report. Still tracking Volkov, she whispered. They're moving with purpose, clearly heading to a predetermined location. 5 men total, heavily armed, protecting whatever's in that case. Our situation is static. Enemy forces maintaining pressure, but not advancing. Almost as if they're just keeping you pinned down, Kate agreed, buying time for Volkov to complete his mission. She maneuvered down a steep section of the ridge, using natural cover to mask her approach. The rocky terrain provided ample concealment, but moving quickly while maintaining stealth required all her training. Ahead, Volkov's team had reached a small plateau overlooking a narrow valley. They appeared to be setting up equipment, a satellite communication array, and various electronic devices. Kate positioned herself behind an outcropping approximately 300 meters away, using her scope to observe. The reinforced case sat in the center of their makeshift camp, still closed, guarded by two men while Volkov worked with the communications equipment. "They've stopped," she reported to Reeves, "butting up communications. Appears they're waiting for something or someone. Extraction, most likely. Helicopter pickup would be feasible from that kind of location." Kate continued to observe, noting details about the team. Their movements were too disciplined, their equipment too advanced for typical Taliban fighters. These were professionals, likely former military or intelligence operatives. "Reeves, these aren't jihadists. They're mercenaries, possibly Russian-trained. Confirms our suspicion that this was never about a defecting scientist," Reeves replied. "What's your play, Morgan?" Kate weighed her options. Direct confrontation meant facing 5 heavily armed professionals alone. Waiting for their extraction meant potentially losing whatever was in that case. She needed more information. "I need to get closer, identify what's in the case." "Too risky. Hold position and observe." "Negative. Time is critical. I'll maintain comms." Before Reeves could object further, Kate began moving, using the growing light to identify a route that would bring her within observation distance without exposing her position. She navigated the treacherous terrain with practiced efficiency, each movement calculated to minimize noise and visibility. After 20 minutes of careful advancement, she reached a position approximately 100 meters from the camp, concealed behind a cluster of rocks. From here, she could see the team clearly and hear fragments of conversation. Russian, confirming her suspicions about their origins. Volkov stood over the communications array, speaking urgently into a handset. Kate strained to catch his words. "Exchange proceeds as planned. The Americans are contained. Delivery will occur at the designated coordinates." Exchange, delivery. The words sent a chill through Kate's body. This wasn't just about stealing a nuclear device. It was about transferring it to someone else. Movement caught her attention. One of the guards had opened the reinforced case, allowing Volkov to inspect its contents. From her angle, Kate couldn't see inside, but she noted the extreme care with which they handled it, the specialized equipment they used to check something within. "Morgan, report." Reeves's voice was tense in her ear. "They're preparing something in the case," she whispered, checking it with what appears to be radiation detection equipment. Volkov mentioned an exchange and delivery. Christ, the single word carried the weight of realization. They're selling it. They're selling a nuclear device. That's my assessment as well. You need to stop them, whatever it takes. Kate calculated angles, distances, her remaining ammunition. 5 targets, all professionals in defensive positions. Challenging but not impossible. "I can eliminate the team," she said, "but I need to know what we're dealing with first. If that's an active nuclear device, a stray bullet could trigger a detonation," Reeves finished grimly. "Approach with extreme caution." Kate secured her rifle and drew her sidearm, a suppressed Sig Sauer. She would need to get closer, potentially close enough to overhear more details or visually confirm the case contents. Moving with painstaking care, she navigated between rock formations, using the growing shadows of dawn to mask her approach. 50 meters from the camp, she found a depression that offered both concealment and audio surveillance potential. From this new position, Volkov's words came through more clearly. "Activation sequence verified. Device is stable and functional. Yield estimated at 15 kilotons, enough to destroy most of Manhattan. Our buyer will be pleased." Manhattan. The target was American soil. Whatever game Harrison was playing, whatever sacrifice he had calculated, these were the true stakes. A nuclear attack on New York City. Kate Keeter calm. "Reeves, I have confirmation. Nuclear device intended for detonation in Manhattan. Yield 15 kilotons." Jesus Christ. Reeves's voice was barely a whisper. You need to secure that device immediately, whatever it takes. Understood. Kate checked her weapons, formulated a plan. I'll move on my next transmission. She studied the camp layout, identifying each guard's position, fields of fire, potential weak points. Volkov remained by the communications array, periodically checking his watch, waiting for something. The decision was made for her when a new sound cut through the morning air, the distant thrum of helicopter rotors. Inbound aircraft, she reported tersely. Their extraction is arriving. Morgan, you cannot let that device leave. Kate readied herself, mentally rehearsing the sequence of actions required. 5 targets, prioritized by threat level. The guards nearest the case first, then the communications operator, then the remaining security, leaving Volkov for last. The helicopter sound grew louder, now visible as a small black dot against the lightning sky. Kate estimated she had less than 2 minutes before it reached the landing zone. Moving now, she said, and broke cover. Her first shots took down the 2 guards nearest the case, suppressed rounds finding their marks with surgical precision. The communications operator turned at the sound of bodies falling, reaching for his weapon. But Kate's third shot caught him in the chest before he could fire. The remaining guards reacted with professional speed, but Kate had the advantage of surprise. A 4th shot eliminated the guard to her left. The 5th guard managed to fire a burst from his automatic weapon, forcing Kate to dive for cover behind a rock formation. Volkov had drawn a pistol and was moving toward the case. Kate pivoted from cover, fired twice, and watched him stumble as one round caught him in the shoulder. He dropped behind the communications array, out of her line of sight. The helicopter was closing fast, now clearly visible as a Russian-made Mi-8 transport. Kate moved toward the case, weapon trained on Volkov's last position. The former KGB officer remained hidden, but a trail of blood indicated he was wounded and moving away from the case. Kate reached the reinforced container, keeping her weapon ready as she glanced inside. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. A compact nuclear device, Soviet-designed, with modern modifications. A digital timer display showed it was in standby mode, ready for programming. A suitcase nuke, just as Harrison had warned. Device secured, she reported. 5 hostiles down or wounded. Extraction helicopter inbound, less than 60 seconds to touchdown. Can you disable the device? Kate studied the intricate mechanism. Negative, it's tamper protected. Any unauthorized attempt to disarm would likely trigger detonation. The helicopter began its descent toward the small plateau, dust swirling in its rotor wash. Kate had seconds to decide. Attempt to transport the device away from the landing zone or engage the helicopter directly. The decision was made for her when Volkov emerged from behind a rock formation, blood staining his jacket, pistol raised. "Stop!" he shouted in accented English. "Step away from the device!" Kate kept her weapon trained on him, positioning herself between Volkov and the nuclear device. "It's over, Volkov. The exchange isn't happening." The Russian's face twisted into a cold smile. "You think you understand what's happening here? You understand nothing, American. This is bigger than you can imagine." "I understand enough," Kate replied. "A nuclear device bound for New York. A mass casualty attack on American soil. A necessary demonstration," Volkov said, his voice eerily calm despite his wound. "The world has forgotten the power of the atom, forgotten what real fear feels like. We will remind them." The helicopter was now hovering directly above the plateau, its downdraft whipping dust and debris around them. Kate maintained her aim on Volkov, calculating her options as a rope ladder descended from the aircraft's side door. "Harrison sent you, didn't he?" Volkov asked suddenly. "The old Cold Warrior, always 3 steps ahead. Tell me, did he tell you about your father?" Kate's concentration wavered momentarily. "What about my father?" Volkov's smile widened. "William Morgan, Somalia, 1993. A mission to capture a Russian arms dealer, me. Your father led the team sent to kill me." "You're lying." Why ask yourself why Harrison has kept you so close all these years? Why he trained you personally? It wasn't out of kindness, American. It was to create a weapon you pointed at me. The helicopter settled lower, now just 20 feet above the ground. Men with rifles appeared in the open door, preparing to provide covering fire for Volkov's extraction. "Harrison knew I would resurface eventually." Volkov continued. He's been planning this for decades. And you, my dear, are the culmination of his plan. The daughter of the man I killed, trained specifically to kill me. Kate's mind raced through implications, connecting dots she'd previously missed. Harrison's personal interest in her development, the specialized training, the convenient assignment to this mission. Even if that's true, she said, steadying her aim, it changes nothing. I won't let you leave with that device. You have no choice. Volkov gestured toward the nuclear case. The device is already armed. A dead man's switch. If my heart stops, it detonates. Kill me, and everyone within 5 kilometers dies instantly. Kate's blood ran cold. If he was telling the truth, shooting him would trigger a nuclear explosion that would kill not only them, but potentially the entire SEAL team still pinned in the valley below. You're bluffing, she said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. Am I? Care to bet the lives of your comrades on that? Volkov began moving slowly toward the rope ladder, his pistol still trained on Kate. Make your choice, daughter of Morgan. Kill me and die with your team, or let me go and perhaps find another way to stop what's coming. The helicopter hovered expectantly, gunners in the door keeping Kate in their sights. She maintained her aim on Volkov, mind calculating rapidly. If he reached the helicopter with the device, thousands, perhaps millions of American civilians would die. If she shot him now and he wasn't bluffing, 24 SEALs would die instantly, including Reeves. Morgan, what's happening? Reeves's voice cut through her earpiece. The helicopter. Stand by, she replied tersely, never taking her eyes off Volkov. Situation complicated. Volkov reached the rope ladder, his wounded arm clearly causing him pain as he gripped it. A pity your father isn't here to see this moment. He made the same choice, sacrificed himself to save his team rather than complete his mission to kill me. Harrison never forgave him for that weakness. The revelation struck Kate like a physical blow. Her father had died not completing a mission because he prioritized his team's survival, just as she was being forced to do now. Volkov began climbing awkwardly up the ladder, still keeping his pistol aimed in her direction. Harrison knew you would make the same choice. He counted on it. That's why he positioned you here, alone. The perfect weapon with the perfect flaw, compassion. The helicopter began to rise slowly, Volkov dangling from the rope ladder, his face twisted in a final triumphant smile. Your father's daughter to the end. Kate maintained her aim, finger tensed on the trigger, mind racing through options. Let him go and risk American lives, or fire and potentially kill everyone in the blast radius. In that moment of desperate calculation, a single shot cracked across the plateau. Not from Kate's weapon, but from somewhere behind her. Volkov's body jerked violently, his head snapping backward as a precision round struck him directly between the eyes. His lifeless body hung momentarily from the rope ladder, then plummeted to the ground as his grip failed. Kate instinctively dove for cover, expecting the nuclear detonation Volkov had threatened. Nothing happened. The helicopter banked sharply, accelerating away from the plateau as its door gunners fired wildly at the unseen shooter. Kate remained in cover, weapon trained on Volkov's motionless form, waiting for the explosion that never came. Dead man's switch was a bluff, came a familiar voice from behind her. Old KGB tactic, create impossible choices to paralyze your opponent. Kate turned slowly, disbelieving, to find Colonel James Harrison emerging from behind a rock formation, a specialized sniper rifle in his weathered hands. You, she whispered, 100 questions colliding in her mind. Harrison moved forward with a deliberate economy of motion that had made him legendary in special operations circles. The device is secure? Kate nodded numbly, still processing his sudden appearance. You were here all along. Operation Last Cold Warrior, Harrison said, kneeling to check Volkov's body. Started in '93 after Somalia, ended here today. You used me, Kate said, anger beginning to replace shock. You used the entire SEAL team as bait. Harrison's eyes, when they met hers, held neither apology nor shame. I used every asset available to prevent a nuclear attack on American soil, including you. Those men down there are dying because of your deception. Those men are soldiers doing their duty, Harrison replied, his voice hardening, just as your father did his. Kate's grip tightened on her weapon. Volkov said my father died because he chose to save his team rather than complete the mission to kill him. Is that true? A flicker of something, regret, perhaps, crossed Harrison's face. William had Volkov in his sights in Mogadishu. Clean shot. Guaranteed kill. But Volkov had rigged explosives that would have killed the rest of the team. Your father chose to warn them, expose his position. It gave Volkov the second he needed to fire first. So my father died a hero, saving his men. Your father died failing his mission, Harrison corrected, though without heat. A mission that, had it succeeded, would have prevented everything that led to this moment. Sometimes the compassionate choice isn't the right one. Kate processed this, emotions warring within her. And what about now? What about Reeves and his team, still pinned down with wounded men? Extraction teams are already inbound. They'll reach the SEAL position within 30 minutes. Harrison moved to the nuclear device, examining it with practiced eyes. This was always the primary objective. Secure the device. Eliminate Volkov. The SEAL mission was necessary cover. Necessary sacrifice, you mean? Kate's voice was cold. Just like in Panama, just like my father. Harrison didn't flinch at the accusation. War requires hard choices, Kate always has. The question isn't whether there will be sacrifice, but whether the sacrifice achieves something worth its cost. And who decides what's worth the cost? You? Someone has to. His eyes, when they met hers again, carried the weight of decades of such decisions. The alternative is paralysis, inaction, defeat. Kate's radio crackled suddenly with Reeves's voice. Morgan, situation report. Are you still there? She keyed her comm, never taking her eyes off Harrison. I'm here. Nuclear device secured. Volkov is dead. Thank God. We've just received word that extraction is inbound. ETA 20 minutes. Copy that. Be advised, Colonel Harrison is with me. He assisted with the situation here. A long pause, then Reeves's voice, tight with controlled fury. Understood. We'll discuss his assistance when we're all safely extracted. Harrison seemed unconcerned with Reeves's evident anger. He secured the nuclear device, closing and sealing the reinforced case with practiced movements. CIA extraction team will take custody of this, he said, indicating the case. You'll be debriefed back at base, then return to your official communications role for the after-action reports. And the truth about Volkov? About my father? About this entire operation? Harrison straightened, fixing her with a steady gaze. The truth, Kate, is that you prevented a nuclear attack on American soil. The rest is classified. Kate felt something harden within her. Not good enough, James. These men deserve to know what they were really fighting for, what they bled for. I deserve to know the whole truth about my father. Some truths serve no purpose except to divide us, to weaken resolve. Harrison's voice softened slightly. Your father was a good man who made a choice he believed in. I've spent 25 years ensuring his sacrifice wasn't wasted. That's the truth that matters. Truth that the distant sound of approaching helicopters filled the momentary silence between them. American extraction forces coming to end this chapter of a decades-long shadow war. Kate holstered her weapon. Decision made. When we get back, I want all the files, everything about my father, about Volkov, about this operation. No more half-truths, no more manipulation. Harrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. You've earned that much. As the first extraction helicopter appeared over the ridge, Kate turned her attention to the valley below, where Reeves and his men had fought through the night, pawns in a game whose true nature they'd never suspected. They've earned it too, she said. The truth, the whole truth about what happened here. Harrison said nothing, his weathered face revealing nothing of his thoughts. But in his silence, Kate sensed something she'd rarely detected from him before. Respect. The game had changed. Whatever came next, she would no longer be a piece moved on someone else's board. Dawn broke over the Afghan mountains, painting jagged peaks in harsh gold light. For Kate Morgan, this particular dawn brought revelations more painful than the night that preceded it. The extraction helicopter thundered across the valley, its rotors slicing through thin mountain air. Kate sat across from Harrison, the secured nuclear device strapped between them like a silent accusation. Through the open door, she watched the ravaged battlefield below, the compound where 24 SEAL operators had fought through the night, believing they were on a rescue mission. A rescue mission that had never existed. Her gaze shifted to Harrison, studying the weathered face of the man who had mentored her for 25 years. The consummate cold warrior, forged in an era when victory was measured in secrets, kept in lives balanced like equations on an invisible ledger. His expression revealed nothing. Eyes fixed forward, military posture perfect despite his 67 years. "You used them," she said finally, her voice barely audible above the rotor noise. "You used me." Harrison met her gaze, neither apologetic nor defensive. "I deployed assets according to mission parameters." Assets. The word tasted bitter. "Those are men down there, men who trusted the intelligence you provided. Men who volunteered to serve, knowing the risks." His voice remained even. "The device is secure. Volkov is eliminated. The mission was successful." At what cost? Harrison's gaze returned to the horizon. At whatever cost necessary. The radio crackled with updates from the second extraction team. 3 SEALs seriously wounded, including Lieutenant Commander Walker, who remained in critical condition. The rest were battered but alive, being evacuated from what the official report would call an intelligence gathering operation that encountered unexpected resistance, a sanitized lie to cover a calculated sacrifice. The helicopter banked sharply, beginning its descent toward forward operating base Chapman. Below, medical teams waited on the tarmac, ready to receive the wounded. Another helicopter had already landed, disgorging the first wave of injured SEALs. Kate caught a glimpse of Reeves directing the evacuation, his uniform torn and bloodied, but his command presence undiminished. "He'll never forgive you," she said, nodding toward Reeves. "Neither will I." Something flickered across Harrison's face, not regret, perhaps, but acknowledgement. Forgiveness was never part of the calculation. The helicopter touched down with a bone-jarring thud. Harrison immediately secured the nuclear device, summoning waiting CIA personnel with a brisk hand signal. Within moments, the reinforced case was transferred to an armored vehicle under heavy guard. Kate stepped onto the tarmac, the morning heat already building despite the early hour. Across the landing zone, her eyes met Reeves's. Even at a distance, she could see the mixture of relief, anger, and betrayal in his expression. He had pieced together enough to understand the broad strokes, that his men had been sacrificed for a different objective entirely. Before she could move toward him, Harrison's hand closed around her upper arm. "Debrief now, then medical check. The team will be attended to." His grip remained firm. "The operation isn't complete until all assets are secured and debriefed." She allowed herself to be guided toward the command bunker. Some confrontations were better held away from public view, and the reckoning that was coming would shake foundations built over decades. Inside the climate-controlled confines of the secure communications room, Harrison sealed the door and engaged privacy protocols. Surveillance cameras powered down, recording devices disconnected. Whatever happened next would exist only in their memories. Kate moved to the center of the room, her posture combat-ready despite her exhaustion. "Start talking. Everything, my father, Volkov. The real purpose of this operation." Harrison studied her for a long moment, calculation evident in his eyes. Then he seemed to come to a decision. "Operation Watchmaker," he began, his voice taking on the cadence of formal briefing. "Initiated in 1991 after intelligence confirmed that 6 portable nuclear devices had gone missing during the Soviet Union's collapse. 5 were recovered through various means. The 6th remained unaccounted for until 3 months ago, when our assets intercepted communications from Yuri Volkov indicating he had obtained the device and intended to sell it to non-state actors for deployment against an American target." "And my father's connection?" Harrison moved to a secure terminal, entering a series of clearance codes. "Operation Kingbreaker, Somalia, 1993. William Morgan led a 4-man team tasked with eliminating Volkov during an arms deal in Mogadishu. The intelligence was solid. The team was elite. Everything should have succeeded." The terminal displayed a classified file, William Morgan's final mission report, most of it heavily redacted, even at Harrison's clearance level. "What happened?" Kate asked, steeling herself for the truth she had sought for decades. Harrison turned to face her fully. "Volkov was more prepared than we anticipated. He had rigged explosives throughout the meeting site, connected to a dead man's switch. William had Volkov in his sights, clean shot, guaranteed kill, when he noticed the explosive setup. If Volkov died, everyone in the building would have been killed instantly, including the rest of Williams' team. Harrison's voice remained steady, but his eyes betrayed the weight of memory. Your father made a choice. Instead of taking the shot, he warned his team about the explosives. The transmission exposed his position. Volkov's security located him and opened fire. William was hit, but managed to provide covering fire while his team escaped. He died, ensuring their survival. Kate absorbed this, emotions warring beneath her controlled exterior. He chose his men over the mission. He chose immediate lives over potential future casualties, Harrison corrected. A human choice, an understandable choice, perhaps even an honorable one. His expression hardened. But it allowed Volkov to disappear for 25 years and ultimately led to this moment, where we nearly lost a major American city to nuclear fire. So this entire operation, Operation Kingfisher, was what? Revenge? Cleaning up old business? Finishing what your father started, Harrison replied. Eliminating Volkov and securing the final missing nuclear device before it could be deployed. The stakes justified the means, including sacrificing a SEAL team? Harrison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The SEAL mission served multiple purposes. It provided legitimate operational cover for positioning you on that ridge. It distracted Volkov's forces, dividing their attention and security, and it presented a believable scenario for why American forces would be in that region if questions were asked afterward. Expendable assets, Kate said coldly. Necessary components, Harrison countered. War isn't clean, Kate. Victory goes to those willing to make the hard calculations, to accept necessary sacrifices for greater outcomes. Like you did in Panama? The question was a blade aimed directly at Harrison's most vulnerable point, when you sacrificed your own son. For the first time, Harrison's composure cracked slightly. He turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. When he spoke again, his voice carried an undertone she'd rarely heard from him, something close to pain. Michael knew the risks. Every operator does. The intelligence we recovered in Panama saved American lives, hundreds, perhaps thousands. That doesn't make his loss easier to bear. It simply makes it meaningful. Kate moved closer, forcing him to meet her gaze. And if I had died on that ridge, would my sacrifice have been equally meaningful? You were never meant to engage directly, Harrison said. Your position was secure. Your role limited to observation and intelligence gathering. I was monitoring the situation from the adjacent ridge the entire time. You were watching me? The realization crystallized with sudden clarity. Protecting the asset I'd spent 25 years developing. No apology in his tone, only pragmatism. When Volkov appeared on that plateau with the device, when circumstances forced your hand, I intervened. To complete the mission, my father couldn't. Harrison nodded once. To ensure William's sacrifice wasn't in vain. Before Kate could respond, the bunker door burst open. Captain Reeves stood in the threshold, his face a mask of controlled fury, flanked by two senior SEAL operators. Blood stained his uniform, dust and gunpowder etched into the lines of his weathered face. Colonel Harrison, he said, his voice dangerously calm, you and I need to have a conversation about what just happened to my men. Harrison straightened, military bearing automatic despite the tension. This is a classified debriefing, Captain. Your presence is not authorized. 3 of my men are fighting for their lives in medical right now, Reeves replied, stepping fully into the room. Walker might not make it, and we just spent 8 hours in hell because of intelligence you knowingly falsified. So we're going to have this conversation. Authorization be damned. The 2 men faced each other, decades of military discipline warring with raw emotion. Kate moved slightly, positioning herself where she could intervene if necessary. Your team performed admirably under difficult circumstances, Harrison said finally. The full parameters of the operation were compartmentalized for operational security. That's standard procedure for sensitive missions. Reeves's control slipped momentarily. You sent us in as bait. You knew the intelligence was wrong. You knew we were walking into a trap. Harrison's expression revealed nothing. The mission objectives were achieved. The primary target was eliminated, and a significant threat to national security was neutralized. What primary target? Reeves demanded. Alexander Volkov didn't exist. The nuclear scientist we were supposedly rescuing was never there. Yuri Volkov, Kate interjected, drawing both men's attention. Former KGB officer specializing in nuclear intelligence. He had obtained a portable Soviet-era nuclear device and was preparing to transfer it to terrorists for deployment in Manhattan. Reeves's eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. And this mission was really about stopping him. We were just a distraction. Your team provided essential tactical support, Harrison said, his tone professionally neutral. The full operational details were beyond your need to know. Beyond my need, Reeves stepped forward, restraint visibly cracking. Men died because of what you withheld. Men die in war, Captain. Harrison didn't flinch. What matters is whether their sacrifice serves a purpose. Your team prevented a nuclear attack on American soil. I'd call that purpose enough. For a moment, it seemed Reeves might physically strike the older officer. Kate tensed, prepared to intervene. Then, with visible effort, Reeves mastered himself. You'll answer for this, he said quietly. Whatever game you've been playing, whatever shadow war you're fighting, it ends here. I'm filing a full report with Naval Special Warfare Command detailing every aspect of this operation. Your report will be classified above your pay grade before it reaches anyone who matters, Harrison replied. This operation has authorization from levels you can't imagine, but file it if it makes you feel better. Reeves turned to Kate, his expression shifting from anger to something more complex. And you, Morgan? Where do you stand in all this? Kate felt the weight of the question, the same one Harrison had manipulated her with for 25 years. This time, however, the choice was truly hers. I stand with the truth, she said finally. Whatever that costs, wherever it leads. Something like respect flickered in Reeves's eyes. He nodded once, then turned back to Harrison. This isn't over, Colonel. It never is, Captain. Harrison's voice carried the weariness of decades of such confrontations. That's the nature of the war we've been fighting since before you were born. It doesn't end with victory parades or surrender ceremonies. It just shifts, evolves, continues. Reeves held his gaze for a long moment, then turned and left without another word, his men following. When the door closed, Harrison sighed deeply, the first genuine display of fatigue Kate had witnessed from him. He'll cause problems, he said, more to himself than to her. Good. Kate's voice was firm. Problems are what happen when the truth starts breaking through. Harrison looked at her, something like regret crossing his features. I never wanted to put you in this position, Kate, but there was no one else I could trust with something this critical. No one else with your skills, your background, your motivation. My vendetta, you mean? The daughter avenging her father? Your commitment to completing what he started, Harrison corrected. William would be proud of what you accomplished today. Would he? Kate wasn't certain anymore. Or would he be horrified at the question? Before Harrison could answer, his secure phone buzzed. He checked the display, his expression shifting instantly back to professional neutrality. The device is secure. CIA transport is preparing for immediate return to Langley. We leave in 30 minutes. And the SEAL team, the wounded, will receive the best medical care available and full honors for their service. He moved toward the door. This operation will be recorded as a successful intelligence gathering mission that encountered unexpected resistance. All details regarding Volkov and the nuclear device will remain classified at the highest level. More lies, Kate said tiredly. Operational security, Harrison countered. The world isn't ready to know how close we came to catastrophe, or how many other Volkovs are still out there planning similar attacks. He paused at the door, studying her with an expression she couldn't fully interpret. Take some time to process everything. Then meet me at the transport. We have debriefings at Langley. Then you'll be returned to your official duty station. After he left, Kate remained motionless in the center of the room, the events of the past 24 hours washing over her in waves. Her father's true fate, Harrison's decades-long manipulation, the SEAL team's unwitting sacrifice, the nuclear threat they'd narrowly averted, and her own role in all of it, the weapon Harrison had spent 25 years crafting, aimed at a target chosen long before she understood the game being played. She had 30 minutes to decide what happened next. The medical bay hummed with subdued urgency, doctors and nurses moving efficiently between beds, where injured SEALs receive treatment. Kate slipped inside, nodding to the guards who recognized her from the mission briefings. Her eyes found Reeves seated beside Walker's bed. The lieutenant commander lay unconscious, his chest heavily bandaged, tubes and wires connecting him to multiple machines monitoring his vital signs. Reeves sensed her presence without looking up. Collapsed lung, damaged heart valve. They're prepping him for evacuation to Germany. I'm sorry, Kate said, the words feeling inadequate. Are you? Reeves finally turned to face her. You knew, didn't you? Before the mission, you knew it wasn't what Harrison briefed us on. I knew something wasn't right, she admitted. Harrison had been preparing me for something different than the official mission parameters. But I didn't know the full truth until I saw Volkov on that plateau. Your position there? Harrison planted the idea indirectly. He wanted me in that specific location with a specific skill set for when things went wrong. Reeves absorbed this, anger warring with understanding in his expression. You saved lives last night. Without your overwatch, we'd all be dead. But you were also part of Harrison's deception. An unwitting part, Kate said firmly. I never agreed to sacrifice your team. But you followed his plan anyway. I followed my instincts, she corrected, which led me to that ridge, then to Volkov, then to the nuclear device. Whatever Harrison intended, what actually happened was my choice. Reeves studied her, his experienced eyes seeing beyond her controlled exterior to the conflict beneath. And now, what choice are you making now, Morgan? Kate glanced at her watch. 20 minutes until the CIA transport departed. 20 minutes to decide where her loyalties truly lay. Harrison expects me to return to Langley with him, she said quietly, to maintain the official narrative, classify the truth, continue the game. And will you? The question hung between them, laden with implications. Kate looked around the room at the injured SEALs, men who had fought through the night believing in a mission that had never existed, men who deserved better than to have their sacrifice buried in redacted files and classified lies. My father died warning his team about a threat, she said finally. He chose their lives over completing his mission. Harrison always saw that as weakness, as failure. But I'm beginning to think it was the opposite. It was strength, the courage to prioritize people over objectives, truth over convenience. Harrison won't see it that way. No, Kate agreed, he won't. She reached into her pocket, withdrawing a small digital storage device. Before coming here, I accessed the secure terminal in the communications room, downloaded everything, the original files on my father's mission, Harrison's real operational plans for Kingfisher, communications logs, everything I could find about Volkov and the missing nuclear device. Reeves's eyes widened slightly. That's treason, Morgan. Is it? Or is concealing the truth about an operation that nearly cost 24 Americans their lives the greater betrayal? She placed the device on the table between them. The full story is there. What you do with it is your call. What I do with it. Reeves looked genuinely surprised. This is your play, not mine. I'm making my choice, Kate said simply. Now you make yours. Do these men deserve to know what they really fought for? Does Walker deserve to know why he's lying here with his chest torn open? Or do we maintain the convenient fiction Harrison has prepared? Reeves stared at the small device, the weight of its contents evident in his expression. Harrison will bury us both if this gets out. Probably, Kate agreed. The question is whether that matters more than the truth. Before Reeves could respond, the medical bay doors opened. Harrison entered, flanked by 2 CIA security personnel. His eyes immediately locked on Kate, then shifted to the storage device on the table between her and Reeves. Kate, his voice carried warning, the transport is preparing for departure. We need to move now. She turned to face him fully, her decision made. I'm not coming, James. Harrison's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. This isn't optional. The debriefing protocol. I know the protocol, Kate interrupted. I also know what really happened here. What you orchestrated. What you sacrificed. What I accomplished, Harrison corrected sharply. What we accomplished. Don't throw away 25 years of purpose over misplaced sentiment. It's not sentiment, it's principle. Kate nodded toward the wounded SEALs. These men deserve the truth. My father deserved better than to have his sacrifice rewritten as failure. And I deserve to make my own choices, not play the role you designed for me. Harrison's gaze flicked briefly to Reeves, then back to her. You're being manipulated, Kate. Captain Reeves has his own agenda. Always has. His judgment regarding me has been compromised since Panama. This isn't about Reeves, Kate replied. This is about me deciding who I am and what I stand for. She took a deliberate step back from him. I'm done being your weapon, James. Find someone else to aim at the next Volkov. For a moment, genuine emotion broke through Harrison's controlled exterior, a mixture of anger, disappointment, and perhaps something close to grief. Then the mask returned, his expression becoming the impassive face of command she had known all her life. Security, he said calmly. Escort Miss Morgan to the transport. She is to be considered a high-value intelligence asset requiring protective custody. The CIA personnel moved forward, hands shifting toward their sidearms. Kate tensed, preparing for resistance. Stand down. Reeves's voice cracked like a whip, stopping the CIA men in their tracks. Behind him, every conscious SEAL in the medical bay had come to alertness, their collective focus a palpable force. This is a naval special warfare facility. You have no authority to remove anyone against their will. Harrison's eyes narrowed. This is a national security matter, Captain. It supersedes military jurisdiction. Then get the proper paperwork, Reeves replied evenly. Until then, Morgan remains under SEAL protection as a mission-critical intelligence asset involved in an ongoing naval special warfare operation. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds, neither man willing to back down. Finally, Harrison spoke directly to Kate, his voice low and intense. You're making a mistake you don't understand. There are larger considerations at play than your personal feelings or these men's injuries. The work we do, the work I've prepared you for, protects millions. At what cost? Kate asked quietly. How many sacrifices? How many lives before the protection becomes worse than the threat? That's not your judgment to make. It is now. Kate stood her ground, unwavering. You've spent my entire life shaping me into your ideal weapon, James. You forgot to consider what would happen when that weapon developed a conscience. Something shifted in Harrison's expression, a recognition, perhaps, that this battle was already lost. He straightened, military bearing impeccable as always. The transport leaves in 15 minutes, he said with cold formality. If you reconsider, be on it. Otherwise, consider yourself relieved of all duties connected to Operation Kingfisher and subject to full security protocols regarding classified information. Without waiting for her response, he turned and left, his CIA security detail following closely. When the doors closed behind him, Kate released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Reeves moved to stand beside her, his presence oddly reassuring despite their complicated history. He won't give up that easily, he said quietly. Harrison plays the long game better than anyone I've ever known. I'm counting on it, Kate replied, but for now, we've bought some time. She nodded toward the storage device still sitting on the table. That information needs to reach the right people, people who can ensure accountability without compromising national security. I know someone, Reeves said. Navy JAG with security clearance and a direct line to the Chief of Naval Operations. He helped clean up the aftermath of Panama, knows Harrison's methods. Can he be trusted? Reeves considered this carefully. He believes in the system, but not in sacrificing people to preserve it. That's as good as it gets at this level. Kate nodded once, decision made. Then we move forward. She glanced around the medical bay at the injured SEALs, men who had fought through hell without understanding why. They deserve that much. And you? Reeves asked. Harrison won't forget this. He'll come for you eventually. A grim smile touched Kate's lips. Let him come. I've learned from the best how to disappear, how to prepare, how to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Her eyes hardened with resolve. He spent 25 years training me to hunt monsters like Volkov. He forgot those same skills work against anyone who crosses the line. Reeves studied her with newfound respect. Your father would be proud, Morgan. I hope so, she replied softly. I really do. 6 months later, Arlington National Cemetery lay hushed under autumn skies, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across endless rows of white headstones. Kate stood alone before a newly updated marker. William Morgan, Chief Petty Officer, U.S. Navy, Cross Operation Kingbreaker. He never left anyone behind. The Navy review had been comprehensive but discreet. Harrison's influence still reached far enough to ensure that the most sensitive aspects of Operation Kingfisher remained classified. But the truth about William Morgan's final mission had been restored. His sacrifice recognized not as failure, but as the highest expression of the SEAL ethos. He would be proud, said a familiar voice behind her. Kate turned to find Reeves approaching, his uniform crisp despite the autumn wind. The past months had aged him somewhat, the review process and recovery of his team taking their toll, but his bearing remained undiminished, his integrity intact. "The hearing concluded?" she asked, though she already knew the answer from her sources. "As well as could be expected." Reeves stopped beside her, gazing at William Morgan's grave. "Harrison has been reassigned to advisory capacity." Diplomatic way of saying forced retirement. His replacement at the Operations Division has implemented new oversight protocols for joint operations. And the team? Walker's back on limited duty. The others have recovered. We've been cleared for redeployment next month. He glanced at her. "And you? What comes next for Kate Morgan?" She considered the question, the future that had seemed so predetermined now suddenly open with possibility. "Naval Intelligence offered me a position, training and operational support for SEAL teams, focusing on improved communications protocols and intelligence verification." "Creating a position specifically to prevent another Kingfisher," Reeves observed. "That's the idea." Kate looked back at her father's grave. No more sacrificial plays disguised as legitimate operations. No more treating operators as expendable assets. Reeves nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. Harrison won't stay sidelined forever. Men like him never truly retire. They just shift to different battlefields. "I'm counting on it." Kate's expression hardened momentarily. "The game isn't over, it's just changed players." They stood in companionable silence for several moments, the autumn wind rustling through the fallen leaves around them. Frank Torres approached, walking slowly but steadily across the cemetery grounds, his weathered face solemn as he joined them at William Morgan's grave. "Thought I might find you two here," he said, nodding respectfully toward the headstone. "Your daddy would have been proud to see this day, Morgan's daughter." Kate smiled at the old frogman. "I couldn't have done it without your help, Torres. The information you shared, the warning you gave me, it made all the difference." Torres shrugged, his eyes on the inscription. "William was my brother in all but blood. I owed him the truth, just like you owed it to these men." He nodded toward Reeves. "There's a position opening in my team," Reeves said, changing the subject. "Scout sniper with communications cross-training. If you're interested." Kate looked at him with genuine surprise. "After everything that happened, you'd want me on your team?" "I saw what you did on that ridge," Reeves replied simply. 31 confirmed kills under impossible conditions. More importantly, I saw someone, Yahawan, who wouldn't leave her team behind even when ordered to." He nodded toward William Morgan's grave. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. The offer was unexpected, but not unwelcome. Kate had spent her entire adult life preparing for a mission Harrison had designed. Now she had the opportunity to choose her own path, to honor her father's legacy in her own way. "I'd need to maintain some independence," she said carefully. "There are still threads from Kingfisher that need to be followed. Volkov wasn't working alone." "Understood." Reeves extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Morgan." She took his hand, the handshake sealing more than just a professional arrangement. It represented a new beginning, a choice made freely rather than manipulated into place. Torres cleared his throat. "Before you both head off to save the world again, I've got something for you." He withdrew a small, weathered leather case from his jacket pocket and handed it to Kate. Inside was her father's personal sidearm, a custom M1911 with his initials engraved on the grip. Kate ran her fingers over the worn metal, feeling the weight of history in her hands. "He'd have wanted you to have it," Torres said quietly. "Not as a weapon, but as a reminder of who he was and who you choose to be." As they turned to leave, Kate caught a glimpse of a solitary figure watching from a distant hilltop. Too far to identify it clearly, but something in the posture, the stillness, suggested Harrison, monitoring, assessing, perhaps planning his next move in the shadow game that had defined his entire career. Let him watch, she thought. Let him wonder what she would do next, how she would use the skills he had so carefully cultivated. The student had surpassed the teacher. The weapon had developed a mind of its own. 3 months later, Kate found herself in a secure facility in Northern Virginia, overseeing a specialized training program for Joint Special Operations Forces. In the state-of-the-art shooting range deep underground, she moved between a mixed group of Navy SEALs, Army Delta operators, and CIA paramilitary officers as they completed a complex firing course. Precision matters more than strength, she instructed, adjusting one operator's stance slightly. Control your breathing. Find the space between heartbeats. That's when you squeeze, not pull, squeeze the trigger. Her father's words, now hers to pass on. At the far end of the range, a door opened silently. Kate sensed the presence before seeing the visitor, a sixth sense developed through years of training and combat experience. She turned to find Reeves approaching, his expression suggesting this wasn't a routine visit. A moment of your time, Morgan? They moved to a soundproofed briefing alcove at the side of the range. Reeves secured the door before speaking, his voice low despite the privacy. We've picked up chatter about a former Soviet nuclear scientist operating out of Kazakhstan, selling expertise to the highest bidder. Kate's interest sharpened immediately. Connected to Volkov? Possibly, but there's more. Reeves handed her a secure tablet displaying surveillance photos. This was taken 3 days ago in Geneva. Security camera at a private banking facility. The image showed an elderly man in an expensive suit, his face partially obscured but still recognizable to anyone who knew him well. Harrison. He's supposed to be retired, Kate said, studying the image carefully. Advisory capacity only, no field operations. Officially, yes. Reeves took back the tablet, wiping its memory with a security protocol. Unofficially, he's meeting with people connected to Kazakhstan, Russian ex-intelligence, private military contractors. All off the books, all highly suspicious. He's continuing the game. That's our assessment. The question is, what's his objective? And where does this mysterious nuclear scientist fit in? Kate felt a cold certainty settle in her gut. Harrison always plays several moves ahead. If he's involving himself with nuclear expertise and Russian connections, it's connected to unfinished business from the Cold War era. Exactly. Reeves met her gaze directly. Command has authorized a deep cover operation, small team, maximum deniability, complete operational freedom. Off the books, but with full backing if things go sideways. He paused. I recommended you to lead it. The implication was clear. Once again, Kate was being asked to hunt, but this time the target wasn't a stranger. It was the man who had shaped her entire life, for better or worse. When do we start? She asked simply. Immediately, full briefing at Quantico tomorrow morning. We're calling it Operation Silent Sentinel. Kate nodded, the codename's significance not lost on her. The watcher in the shadows. The guardian no one sees until it's too late. One more thing, Reeves added. This arrived for you this morning. Through official channels, security cleared. He handed her a small package. Inside was a single item. Her father's Navy SEAL trident mounted on a simple wooden plaque. Beneath it, an inscription on a brass plate. To Kate Morgan, your father's daughter. The legacy continues. No signature was necessary. The message was clear enough. Harrison acknowledged her choice, respected her independence, perhaps even approved of the path she had chosen, even as he continued his own shadowy operations beyond official oversight. He's testing me, Kate said quietly, tracing her finger over her father's trident. Seeing which way I'll jump. And which way will you? Kate placed the plaque carefully back in its box. The only way I know how, with precision, with purpose, and with absolute commitment to the truth, whatever it costs, wherever it leads. As she said the words, she knew their full weight. Harrison had trained her to hunt monsters like Volkov, men who threatened innocent lives for ideology or profit. But what happens when the line between hunter and monster begins to blur? When does the pursuit of security become its own kind of threat? Her father had understood that line and chose not to cross it, even at the cost of his own life. Now it was her turn to make that choice, again and again, with each mission, with each decision. to be the guardian not just of American lives, but of the principles that made those lives worth protecting. Kate withdrew her father's M1911 from its holster at her hip, the same weapon Torres had given her at the cemetery. She ran her fingers over the worn grip, feeling the connection to her past and the responsibility to her future. Operation Silent Sentinel, she said finally, her voice firm with resolve. I'll need a full dossier on Harrison's movements for the past 3 months, access to all intelligence on the Kazakhstan scientist, and a team I can trust absolutely. She looked up at Reeves. Starting with you, if you're willing to get your hands dirty again. Already assembled and waiting for your orders, Reeves replied with a grim smile. Harrison taught you how to hunt. Now we'll see if he remembers what it's like to be hunted. As she left the shooting range that evening, Kate felt a sense of clarity she had never known before. The Eastern Ridge had been just the beginning of her true journey, not as Harrison's weapon, but as her father's daughter. The silent sentinel, watching from the shadows, ready to protect both the innocent and the truth itself. The real climb, the ascent to her own destiny free from manipulation and deception, was only now truly underway. And Kate Morgan was ready.